Hi, I'm Julia. Welcome to the Writer's Room. Today I have a short story for you of adventure. It's about my brother Matt, who I haven't written a story about until now. Many of them have been about my brother Dave and I. I haven't been on here in a couple of months, and just took a couple of months really to want to write again. Nothing's worse than being forced to write and not feeling good about it. You're certainly not going to get anything creative out of that. This story takes place in the 70s, and it is a story more about showing and less telling. So I have very little dialogue between my brother and I. Some streams of consciousness of me thinking in my head, but I hope you enjoy it. Here it goes. It's called the Raft. Begins. The water was swift and high at its middle, and pooling into slow curves at its edges. My brother and I, full of life, richly lived for moments like these, with the next adventure waiting to be found just around the next bend, or with the next dig site awaiting our arrival to unearth its treasures of history's past. Laying belly down on our homemade rafts, we floated the current down the Black River in upstate New York. Our hands ever plunging into the cool water to flip over a stone sizable enough to perhaps be holding still beneath it a blue glass bottle, or better still, gold, which would have been the crown jewel to our adventure. Most times we would find a crayfish, though, zooming out backwards, propelled by its strong back fin. Sometimes we grabbed for them too, with our free hands. For this small crustaceous creature would be hallmarked for a point or two in our digging about the river on bright sunny days of the summers in our youth. Matt was 6 and I was 9, and we had never been more free, as in those times of the 1970s, to just be kids, daring to have the world around us stop us from living as children should. With our open minds and hearts and a quest for an adventure, we persisted. Nevertheless, a near tragedy intruded and gave way to the last of our raft riding days in that summer on the Black Creek, which is a small part of the Genesee River. The day started off as any would, hot and humid, with early morning rituals of breakfast first, then chores, then freedom. Out the door we shot, stopping to pick up our rafts, buckets, and fish net off the front porch. Also, our mother calls us, "You ragamuffins," in a loving but not complimentary way. Please be careful and don't do anything stupid. Julia, watch out for your brother. He's your responsibility. Tone deaf to anything other than finding treasure or crayfish, we are off down the driveway and onto a cracked sidewalk leading us to a narrow bridge with busted guardrails, not too far from our house. "You go first," I say to Matt. "No, you," he replies. "Listen, I'm the captain and you're my first mate, so you have to do what I tell you." Begrudgingly, Matt squeezes through the rails on the bridge. He then sits down on the other side and scoots down a narrow dirt path that is canopied with ferns, flowers, and weeds. As Matt disappears from my view, I quickly toss our rafts, bucket, and net over the rails and pop myself over too. Gear in tow, down I go. When I reach the bottom, I find Matt waiting by the river, through the canopy of weeds and ferns, mind you, to find him patiently awaiting and seemingly at attention, as a good shoulder does. We each grab our raft. Matt takes the bucket and I take the net. We troll the edge of the river, rock jumping our way down to find just the right launching point to begin our day of treasure hunting. The Genesee River feeds into the Black Creek River, covering some 45 miles of length. Unknown to our young selves, that morning there was an overflow release just a few miles upriver from us. The water was swift in the center. Matt and I tag-teamed our way out to it in quick work. We began to drift. And rapidly, I must say, as we enter the jet stream of it. This is going to be so much fun, my brother says. Over the babbling sound of water coursing over rocks. Matt has gotten ahead of me, and I think to myself, I'll catch up to him. But I don't for some time. I have spotted a shiny blue object just a few feet away from me and under the water. I paddle over to it and immediately plunge my hand in the water to pull out an intact bottle, blue, what I think is from the 1800s. I hold it up to the sun to see near microscopic water bugs bouncing around it. It captures me, so I stare at it a while longer. Suddenly I hear a faraway yell of pain from Matt. I drop the bottle back into the river, whip my head around, and immediately regret leaving Matt to drift downstream. I make quick work of paddling to the current to carry me to where I hear my brother's voice. Louder and more urgent, he calls my name. Julia! What seems like an eternity is only minutes, really. I round a corner and the river opens up to a rapid and log and old tree root filled area piled up on rocks. Foam has formed in the water's turbulence. It pops into the air like bubbles. I find my brother, half in the water, lodged against a snarling mess of branches. His raft is long gone. I call out to him, I'm coming, hold on. I'm stuck, he says, and my knee, something is pinching it hard. I can't move. Fighting the rising water, sprays, and foam, I jump off my raft and let it and the net drift away forever. I slip in and lose my footing on the rocks below my feet. I go under briefly and re-emerge next to Matt. I grab Matt around the waist. He screams out in pain. I try to pull him towards me, but he says, don't. I put my head underwater again and open my eyes to see that Matt's knee, an appointed tree branch, has jabbed into him under his knee. The blood is pouring out of it and makes the water look pink. I tell Matt it's just a stick. I'm going to pull you straight up. I think this will free you. Moving to the front of Matt's body, I pull him up and free him from the stick. I don't feel so good, he tells me. Dragging Matt to the edge of the river, we scramble up the bank and bushwhack through the brush and tall weeds. Matt's knee is pumping out a steady stream of blood from his 6-year-old body. He looks a little pale in the face. We're almost home, I tell him. We reach the edge of the woods and find ourselves on the sidewalks that will take us home. Matt gives me a warning that he's not sure he's going to make it. He slumps forward and passes out. I try to pick him up, but in my arms, he is just flopping around and too heavy. I decided to drag him under the arms down the sidewalk, walking backwards, as a wounded soldier is he coming from battle. This sight of us has drawn the attention of neighbors coming out of their houses. A small crowd of kids has gathered too. They watch me drag my poor, lifeless-looking brother. I find I don't go far before I hear our mother's voice and her impending footfalls on the cement. That river adventure would be our last of being young, wild, and free. I ended that with what happened. Well, of course, my brother lived, of course. He has an incredible scar all these years later, and the stick, or like the branch that was wedged underneath, actually shot underneath his kneecap, through his skin under his kneecap. He was so brave. He didn't even cry, which was incredible. And my mother, she was probably just going to kill me, She was really going to kill me. I do know that, he rallied around. We popped him in the car and took him to, instead of hospital, like a local doctor's office, who stitched him up and with no anesthesia, which is like, you never hear of doing that, but he's fine. But we never did go back out on the river again. Our rafts were long gone, but we certainly did have a lot of fun. in upstate New York in the 1970s, in a small little village type town, very old. There was once many mills that operated along the Black River and the Otka River, which are part of the Genesee River, which is huge and very long. I want to thank everybody for listening and watching. If there's any questions, feel free to shoot them our way. If I'm still working on a larger body of work, which isn't going to appear here. Not yet, anyways. But I hope to next week have something else, something new. And with that, I'd like to leave you with good thoughts and to say good words and to do good deeds.